Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, this is dated 12/27/2008. I don't think I've covered this one before. I know I looked at it. If I did cover it, I apologize. But I think the first time I read it, I got a little confused with the other Valerie. Scientology, Keith Henson, and his little personal problem. As Valerie Henson, she has applied to change her name to delete her father's last name, says on www.valhenson.org. I'll be checking to see if I can find that site. Hold on, guys. Would help if I'm in the right thing here. My name is Valerie Henson. Keith Henson is my biological father and a serial child molester. He molested at least 4 girls between 1974 and 1981. Wonder if he went up the ranks in Scientology, more likely, including at least 2 of his own daughters. Isn't that fantastic, you guys? His youngest victim was 6 years old. None of the families involved, including ours, pressed charges, believing that a conviction was unlikely. Keith escaped without any punishment. It's too bad for the other children that I'm sure he would go on to molest. Today, many people regard him as a hero for his opposition to the Church of Scientology. Yeah, I remember hearing about this guy, and I got confused because I didn't realize that he had been a Scientologist. Wonder if Rinder and Rathburn know him. I do wonder. For years, Keith's daughters have refused to speak on the record about our child molesting father, primarily to protect each other from media attention. We are going on the record now. The child molester. CHOMO. Keith Henson, full name Howard Keith Henson, has always been a figure of some minor notoriety. Oh, like a prestigious executive? He has been associated with several semi-famous projects or movements, such as space colonization, memetics, and storing people's frozen heads. Keith is best known for his long-standing harassment of the Scientologists, a creepy Borg-like cult. What is less well known about Keith Henson is that he molested at least 4 girls between the ages 6 and 12 from 1974 to 1981, including 2 of his own daughters. Our sister Gail finally told our mother that Keith had molested her in 1981. 2 other girls came forward shortly afterwards. Another kept her molestation secret out of fear until several years later. After Gail came forward, Keith confessed that he had molested the girls to his counselors and wife. Does that mean auditors? Carolyn Meanell, we are honestly not sure how many children Keith molested in total, or if he stopped in 1981. You guys know he didn't stop. There's only one thing that stops him, and I can't talk about that here. The results were all too common for cases of sexual abuse. The police were obviously skeptical. Really, were they? Were they skeptical? Huh. The law required family counseling before they could move to the next step in the prosecution. Do they get to pick the counselor too? Initially I thought this was auditing, but maybe not. Do they shame the victims there? The other victims didn't want to testify in court, and Carolyn didn't want to prosecute Keith because she didn't want him killed in prison. Damn. When they found out he was a child molester, in the end, no one pressed charges against Keith. Carolyn divorced Keith, who immediately remarried to R.L. Lucas. Isn't that great, you guys? Did he get a fresh supply of children? Despite being intimately familiar with the circumstances of Keith's divorce. See, another enabler, if not partaking. R.L. conceived and gave birth to another daughter. There's more supply. Shortly thereafter, our half-sister Amber. Our sister Gail took responsibility for protecting Amber. Where's Mama? And forced Keith and R.L. to allow her to visit and quiz Amber on a regular basis by threatening to prosecute Keith if they denied her access to Amber. Isn't it funny how the daughter had to do this? Fuck around and find out. So apparently I can't see any proof that he was a Scientologist yet. But he protested them. Surprised they didn't do some hate website on him. The Scientologists. Keith Henson would have faded from the public eye long ago, but for one reason, his campaign against the Church of Scientology. The irony here, man. Keith devoted several years of his life to annoying the Scientologists, picketing isolated Scientology compounds. You guys go and, if you could please, siphon through various websites to see who was associated with this Keith Henson. If you could do that, I would appreciate it. Birds of a motherfucking feather. Keith devoted several years of his life to annoying the Scientologists, picketing isolated Scientology compounds, biting the arms of people, and posting prolifically on Usenet. I don't think that's around anymore. Although Keith's activities had little visible effect, the Scientologists took Keith seriously and began investigating him. Can you guys see the irony in all this? It's unreal. Just using children as pawns. The Scientologists quickly found court documents in which Carolyn Meenow explicitly accused Keith Henson of molesting their daughters. They also found people who went on the record saying that Carolyn had divorced Keith for molesting their daughters. Triumphantly, the Scientologists publicized their findings and were universally disbelieved. Isn't that interesting, you guys? So R-ing little girls is just frickin' hunky-dory. Isn't that great? Go and R your 4 or 5-year-old daughter. Nobody seems to have a problem with it. I bet the prisoners would have had a problem. But oh wait, he didn't go to prison, did he? At present, many people believe that Keith Henson is a heroic freedom fighter, wrongfully persecuted by the Scientologists. I can't blame them. The Scientologists had strong motivation to discredit Keith and might have made up evidence in their desperation. And Keith Henson's 2 wives and 5 daughters have never made any conclusive public statement about his child molesting. Most famously, Keith's first wife, Carolyn Meinel, posted to Usenet. I don't think Usenet is around anymore, guys, do you? An ambiguous message which implied, but did not actually state, probably for legal reasons, that the Scientologists were lying about Keith's child molestation. For many years, Keith and Carolyn's daughters refused to go on the record about Keith in any way. Wonder why? Few people noticed our silence. Even fewer suspected the true cause of it. Update. Now that this page has gone public, the Scientologists are predictably trying to help by piling on support. We ask that you not allow their actions to taint ours. We detest the Scientologists and have always refused to work with them, the daughters. Be right back. We, Keith Henson and Carolyn Meinel's daughters, refused to speak on the record about Keith Henson's child molesting habits for many years. For all the usual reasons and then some. Like most rape, incest, and molestation victims, the shame would fall mostly on us rather than the criminal. None of us wanted to be the daughter of Keith Henson, child molester, on the national news. Our half-sister, Keith and R.L.'s daughter, Amber Henson, was happily living a normal childhood, thanks to Gail's policing of Keith, and would be hurt far more than Keith if we talked. To make matters far, far worse, we had to choose between covering up for our child-molesting father and helping the Church of Scientology. Wow. Either way, we'd be helping criminals. Yep. The Scientologists sent investigators. Names. Could it have been Rinder? Just gotta wonder. Since Rinder was head of OSA. The Scientologists sent investigators to our houses on a regular basis, trying to convince us to give us anything that they could use against Keith. In the end, we kept silent mostly to protect our half-sister Amber. We all gave the Scientologists the same advice. If you really want to hurt Keith, ignore him. I can think of other ways, but I can't say them here. The Scientologists eventually got Keith Henson convicted for interfering with a religion. Man, the irony here, you guys. He can get convicted for that, but not R-ing all these little girls, including his own daughters. Through Keith's deliberate actions, he became a fugitive for many years and could not appear in public. During that time, I became active and even well-known in computer-related professional and social circles, the same circles where Keith was well-known and respected. Was he a prestigious executive? When people asked me if I was Keith Henson's daughter, I told them that I didn't speak to him and didn't want to talk about him, and left it at that. I mean, not like anybody really cares about little girls getting R-ed by their fathers. I mean, nobody seems to really care. I mean, people do. It's just not the right ones, I guess. Keith eventually served his trivial prison sentence. Oh, obviously the prisoners didn't know then, you guys. If they'd have known, he wouldn't have made it out. And is now out on probation and back in the science fiction electronic freedom hacker scene. The same group of people who make up a large part of my professional and social network. In November of 2007, I checked into a professional conference and saw my name on the roster, right below his. I wanted to vomit or scream or both. I know what I would have done, but I'm a little nuts. Sure freaking would have known what I would have done. I left the conference immediately. What a great place to just tell the whole freaking audience, right? I sure would have, you guys. I'm nuts like that. I can't simply avoid Keith any longer. After the incident at the conference, I asked my sisters if they would support me going public about Keith. They agreed, and my sister Gail, Keith's first victim that we know of. There are probably more. Also decided to go on the record. We no longer care if we benefit the Scientologists. We just hope they don't continue to unwittingly support Keith by attacking him. I mean, obviously, we all know a lot of Scientologists don't care about children. That's pretty obvious. Not all of them. I am deeply sorry that we covered up for Keith for so long. See, there's victims always saying sorry. That makes me so sad when I hear that stuff. I hear a lot of the second gen and third generation Scientologists always, saying sorry for things. It's just so hurtful. But I still think it was worth it for allowing Amber to grow up as normally as possible, the wives. Keith Henson's two wives, Carolyn Meynell and R.L. Lucas, have supported Keith, but have not, to my knowledge, ever directly denied that Keith molested children. So there's a little fuzziness there. Is Carolyn Meynell their mother, and she divorced him, but did she stick up for them? Janie's got a gun. Janie's got a gun. Keith's first wife, Carolyn Meynell, divorced Keith in 1982 specifically for molesting her daughters. Okay. The first documented testimony from her that I'm aware of is an affidavit filed in support of a later legal action against Keith Henson. Okay, so the one wife did. Arizona Superior Court, Pima County, number Delta-36084. What a great number, 36. Affidavit to be signed by spouse on order to show cause. Wait, where am I here? Oh. Petitioner Carolyn Meynell Henson responded, Howard Keith Henson, State of Arizona, County of Pima. I know this is dry, you guys, but maybe it gets something, gets somewhere. Carolyn Meynell Henson, being first duly sworn, makes the following answers and statements of fact as material evidence. This is a long time ago, you guys. Total monthly expenses $955 plus medical. $6,000 since May 1981 includes Gail's operation and 4-day hospital stay. Valerie in Virginia for pulmonary problems and psychological counseling for Gail and redacted blank whoever as a result of father's sexual molestation of them. Some of Keith's supporters have dismissed this evidence with the facile argument. You guys know, birds of a feather, right? That women all... Oh, here we go, you guys. How many times have I talked about this? That women often falsely accuse their husbands of child molestation. Okay, that one I didn't talk about. I'm getting ready for them to say that the children are making it up and it's false memories. There's a way to stop that, but I can't say what it is. Oh. Child molestation during divorce in order to get more money. Can you believe this? And assets in the divorce settlement. This argument, I don't know what dickhead said this. This argument is incredibly offensive. Yes, it is. In the general case and completely inapplicable in this specific case. Keith Henson did not then and does not now have any assets to take. So he R's his little girls. Doesn't go to prison. Nobody makes him go to prison. Doesn't do anything. And then he doesn't even have any money to help his ex-wife and his daughters that he brought into the world. Complete waste of space. He declared bankruptcy. There you go. Waste of space. Waste of fucking space. He declared bankruptcy during the Scientology court case. Even the house we lived in at the time of the divorce was nearly worthless, as it was undermined by tunnels. I'm not going to go there, you guys. That's just... and not safe to live in. The idea that Carolyn named her daughters as victims of child molestation in public court papers, only to extort money. Extort money from what? He doesn't have anything. Oh, it's just so sickening. It's always the same story. From Keith doesn't even pass the laugh test. Oh, do you like little girls too, you freaking scumbag? I don't know who wrote this. Like, it goes, this is something within the court documents. Carolyn later semi-defended Keith in a 1997 Usenet post, often summarized as a Keith Henson's ex-wife denies. You see, they did the same thing to the Cupcake Mom. I mean, I'm not saying that the Cupcake Moms did this. You see what they do? You see what they do, right? Take him down in the middle of Tennessee and drop his ass off. Find out what happens. What Carolyn actually wrote was carefully crafted. There's that word again. Couldn't think of any other word. Carefully crafted, that's a 3-3. To imply that Keith was, I mean, I might be reading into it, but I'm probably not. That Keith was not a child molester without actually denying it. Here is her 1997 alt.religion.scientology posting. Someone got to her, because we know what happened. I hope none of you who have been reading these Who is Keith Henson posts assume that they are true. As his ex-wife, perhaps I know the real story. Someone got to her. I know what my mother said she would do if she ever found someone trying to hurt me or my brother. And the other daughters. In particular, I refer to the stuff about Dave Scheer testifying about child molestation. For starters, why the heck would Dave Scheer get entangled in our divorce? I'm trying to think about the Scientology connection here. Something's weird. Even if Scheer did get involved, why would he know anything about child molestation? Well, just ask your daughters. It's simple, isn't it? All Scheer could contribute was hearsay. They always try to do that, you guys. They go for the evidence. They try to throw the evidence out, or say the evidence is not valid, or try to say like the child's testimony is hearsay, or the woman who was drugged in ARD, it's hearsay, which does not belong in a legal document. Scientologists make poor liars. Something weird. I can't follow this right now. Sheesh, guys, if this Dianetics stuff is so good, you would at least find ways to make yourselves look credible. I don't know who's talking to who right now. They needed to kind of explain this a little more. Carolyn says she hopes you don't assume the stories are true. Hold on, because I don't want to snap right now, you guys. I'm not in the mood to snap. So there's all this like, hold on, she says Scientology are poor liars. But doesn't say they're lying. I don't know. Scientology's involved here, but I don't understand. Okay, I'm skipping because it's just going to make me snap out. If Carolyn knows that Keith is a child molester, then why did she post this half defense to Usenet? Cha-ching. If that was her, you guys. I mean, honestly, on the internet, anybody can post stuff. So it just makes you wonder. I confronted her about it in 2007 after her post was interpreted yet again as a defense of Keith. This particular quote was his ex-wife laughed that one off. Really? He's hiring the daughters and everybody's laughing? Yeah, it's real funny, isn't it? And has denied the accusation as fervent. This, I don't even know who is saying this stuff. See, they're just jumping all over the place. I did not find that story. Okay, this is the daughter talking again. She's got to like break it down here. I did not find that story at that link, and I did not ever laugh off the incest story. I can only control what I do say, not what anonymous people say, I said. Okay, see, that's what I said. And I don't even know who's like going off on her. It doesn't even make any sense to me. If you can find the correct link, I would quietly contact moderator, if one exists, facts, in private to deny the story and to say that I support my daughters. Good. Maybe it was like somebody that knew her ex-husband putting it out there, or him. This is how I got that. Wikipedia, you guys know. Wikipedia story removed. I also called a TV reporter on the story, Brandon Klein, KPNX Channel 12, at 602-694-1045, and told him that I support my daughters and don't support Keith's side of the story. Well, that's good, because you guys know I was going to snap. That was going to be my... I'm just not. Are you angry over my pointing out that David Shear's allegation in court that Keith molested all 4 of his kids was hearsay? I did that to protect you in Virginia because the Scientologists were exploiting Shear's allegation. And I didn't think you wanted that false story about you going around. Please remember there is a stigma against RAPE survivors, and that was my concern for you. At the time of his testimony, Shear was battling to keep Keith from taking over Analog Precision. So the ex-husband must have money here. And in his anger, he went from fact to guesses. There was no evidence that Keith sexually abused either of you. Really? Says who, you guys? Says who? I never allowed him access to you after April of 1981. Who's talking right now? Immediately upon Gail telling me what had been going on. You were both babies. Everyone who has accused Keith of sexual abuse was at least 8 years old. So they're like, so now these freaking morons, whoever these are that are trying to argue with the ex-wife, these freaking imbecilic morons, probably pedophiles themselves, are trying to argue about the ages of the victims in complete pedophile logic. When he did it, so I doubt that he was ever sexually abusing babies. And the sexual abuse counselors with whom I worked did not see any possibility. Because I respect Gail's and Blank's wishes, when I was contacted by the prosecutor in Keith's trial in Riverside, California. Isn't Riverside close to LA, you guys? I think it is. I refused to agree to testify about Keith being dangerous. Once I was on the witness stand, the Scientologists, lawyers, could have grilled me about the incest and Keith's threats. Gail and Blank did not wish to be the target of the resulting media circus. Totally understandable. So somehow Scientology is all immersed into this filth. They're trying to use it as some type of opportunity to go after him because he criticized Scientology. Not caring about the children, of course. I mean, because why would anybody care about the children? In summary, Carolyn's explanation of why she semi-defended Keith Henson is that she was trying to protect any of her daughters from being publicly identified as Keith's victims, regardless of whether they were actually his victims. You see how they're gaslighting? I don't know who wrote this article. Initially, I thought it was the daughters, but there's some gaslighting going on, and I'm not sure who put the gaslighting in here. It was merely an unfortunate side effect that she had to defend Keith to do it. Okay, that does make sense why she would do something like that. But they're that old saying, take it an inch instead of a mile, or whatever it is. Or no, give somebody an inch, they take a mile. In contrast, when I asked her about her Usenet post back in 1997 after having heard rumors, but not actually reading it, she told me that she was proud of Keith for fighting the Scientologists. Something's not smelling right. Somebody's interjecting some lies here. So I already know that because the mother already said she didn't say that stuff. Hold on, I'm not gonna read this vile garbage if anybody's trying to make the molester that he's okay. I wished I would have known that this was in here. Okay, you guys, I sifted through a few paragraphs because it was just getting too much. People were trying to dilute the stories, and it sounds like what was happening was the mother was trying to protect the daughters because she did not want the daughters' names out in public with this. And whomever was trying to interject in this, probably Scientology, was just going with it. So I'm not going to read that. It's going to just piss me off. As a child, the whole Keith is a child molester thing seemed very simple to me. This is the daughter talking. Keith is a bad person and I should stay away from him. And you guys already know I should have said trigger warning on this stuff. But my sisters and I all had to make terrible choices. Choices that no one should ever have to make, and we are still making them. To start with, Gail had to choose between getting impregnated by her father and breaking up her parents' marriage at the age of 12. The level of sickness, you guys. To protect our half-sister Amber, Gail had to threaten to prosecute Keith, but not actually do it because even if Keith was convicted, Gail would be cut off from all contact with Amber for at least a year. Isn't that a great mother there? Let your husband essay your daughter, and then if the other half-sister wants to come and visit her, you're not going to allow that daughter, the sister, to see her because your pedophile husband might get prosecuted? Gail then had to periodically live in the same house with Keith for months on end. There's so many stories like this. In large part, most of our compromises resulted from the fact that siblings have almost no legal rights. Children seem to have no rights, do they? With regard to each other, while the people who did have legal rights, our parents, were negligent at best and criminal at worst. Yeah, I'd say criminal. After my older sisters both ran away from home, I wonder why they did that. Driven away by our mother and her new husband, they were cut off from contact from my little sister Virginia and me. Our sisters were afraid for our safety, correctly, as it turns out. but couldn't see us in person because our mother threatened to call the police if they came near us. Isn't that fantastic, you guys? Our sisters had to work with Keith, who did have some rights, to try to contact us, which failed in the end. As a child, I had to choose between risking Carolyn losing custody of me to Keith. Oh, isn't this fantastic, you guys? A known child molester, and being legally adopted by my stepfather, John Bosma, who had only tried to molest me. Obviously, you guys know these women have no knives in their house. You do know some women sell their daughters, right? They do that. Gail invited Amber to our wedding, and Keith and Arl invited themselves. She had to choose between excluding Amber and allowing her father, the pedo, to be at her wedding. See, what they're doing is they're keeping up appearances. So sick. Fortunately, he spent most of his time bending other guests' ears about Scientology. I do wonder how many people were in the know of this, because you know it happens a lot. An ongoing choice we had to make was between helping the Scientologists by going on the record about Keith and helping Keith by staying silent. We had to make this choice every time the investigators knocked on our doors, literally. Can you guys see, like, the level of depravity? It's so sick. And who gets hurt? The little girls get hurt. And nobody helps. From the outside, it looks very simple. Father molests children. Father goes to jail. Family never sees him again. And any deviation from this is inexplicable. From the inside, it's complicated and torturous and horrifying. We were children and we loved each other. And our parents did not. Nobody seemed to love these poor children. So sad. No one should ever have to make these choices, but we didn't have that option. The sources. Once again, little girls that got hard by their own father, no justice. Gail Grant, formerly Henson, Carolyn Meinel, and I, Valerie Henson, are willing to speak on the record and give whatever other help we can to uncover Keith's history of child molestation. Wonder how many more victims. We still won't work directly with the Scientologists for the simple reason that no one will believe what they say. Gail Grant, formerly Gail Henson, was Keith's first victim that we know of. She is willing to talk to reporters, give dates, places, and names, and help dig up records. Her story below of Keith's molestation of her and 3 other children is deeply upsetting. Don't read it unless you absolutely have to. I'll probably skip it. Gail Grant's description of Keith Henson's child molestation, definitely not WorkSafe. And all the Scientologists cared were just like discrediting him. They didn't care about the girls. Big surprise, right? Gail can be contacted at gailgrant@earthlink.net. Carolyn Meinel heard Gail's story in Keith's confession. Well, I guess confessions don't go far anymore. Like Miriam Francis's father confessed and nobody did anything. And knows all the details of the aborted police case. Oh, another aborted police case. Huh. And her divorce from Keith. In her 2007 email to me, Carolyn offered to help dig up evidence against Keith Henson. From the email. If you should decide to encourage Gail or blank to finally take action to put Keith in prison for what he did to them, I can help by hunting up contact information of the two counselors who heard Keith's confession. Dr. Don Eckerstorm and Cindy Noche. Presumably some public records also remain. Note that prosecuting Keith is impossible because the statute, there we go. These statute of limitations, they have to stop. Because the statute of limitations has run out. The last time a Scientologist hired investigator showed up at my house, the PIs. He didn't care about Keith's 1974 to 1981 child molestation, you see? He only wanted to know if we had any suspicion that Keith had molested children more recently. It's blackmail material. Isn't it great when children are used as pawns in ARD and nobody does anything? I, Valerie Henson, was only a few months shy of my 4th birthday. How big would a 4-year-old be, you guys? Maybe 50, 60 pounds? A few months shy of my 4th birthday when Carolyn divorced Keith. I do have memories of living with Keith and of neglect and abuse on both his and Carolyn's part, but I do not remember him molesting me. Various doctors over the years have noticed physical evidence suggestive of molestation. See, I told you can get physical evidence, but nothing conclusive. What exactly conclusive do you need? Do you need like a video of it? I can't give first-hand testimony about Keith, and there is a way. I don't want to get into it. You guys know there's a way to verify those things. I can't give first-hand testimony about Keith's child molestation. I wonder if she blocked it out. I can only assemble my sister's testimony and the documentation related to the case. I, too, am willing to talk to reporters, give dates, places, and names, and help dig up records. Don't worry, nobody's going to do anything. Nobody's going to do anything. I can be contacted at val.henson@gmail.com. If you convince me that you are neither a stalker or a Scientologist, I will talk to you over the phone. Painfully but not surprisingly, our half-sister Amber Henson has decided she cannot and will not believe that her father molested her half-sisters. They brainwashed her. Probably the father helped with that. She still gives interviews defending and supporting Keith, to our sorrow and frustration. This willful blindness is unfortunately common with allegations of incest. Oh yeah, incest is a big one. It's often much easier to believe that your sisters or cousins or aunts are lying. They know, trust me, they just want to pretend it doesn't exist. Trust me on that one. A note on false memory syndrome. I told you guys, don't even get me started. A note on false memory syndrome. A reasonable person might question whether Keith Henson's accusers, they always use this every single time, you guys, it doesn't exist. They might block it out because of the trauma. That exists. That exists. Are suffering from false memory syndrome, which, by the way, the Satanists created all that. And not all Satanists are bad, believe it or not. Remembering things that did not happen in order to satisfy some other need. Certainly, sometimes people remember things that did not happen. It's their best defense, you guys. The cases of repressed or recovered memories which turned out to be debunked by third-party evidence. Really? Go check Ted Gunderson and Oh, what's Kathy O'Brien, Transformation of America, Mark Phillips. Go check out Mark Phillips' work. Evidence often have similar elements. Strong pressure from a therapist. You see this shit? Just like trying to put it on the police officer or the counselor. It's just so disgusting. So it would just be natural for a 3-year-old little girl to have some large, inside of her. From a therapist or authority figure. I don't even like reading this. It just pisses me off so bad. And a young child to tell them the story they want to hear. Why? Okay, just the logic there. Why would anyone want to hear that, you see? Okay, it's going to piss me off. I'm just skipping that. I can't. In Keith Henson's case, none of his victims ever forgot what he did to them. Thank you. Neither did my mother when her father was R-ing her from the age of 3. I'm going to tell that story one day, you guys. I just got to, organize it in my head. Beginning from the moment he molested them and continuing uninterrupted until today. No counselor cajoled a confession out of a 12-year-old Gail. Certainly not our mother, who was completely oblivious. No therapist began drawing out fantasies from them 30 years later. In our case, even today, no one wants to hear our stories. Does that include police officers? And there is no way we are getting attention or satisfaction out of making them up. Exactly. What does anyone benefit from that? When Gail and Carolyn went to the police, oh, I can't wait for this, they were far from encouraging. There you go, you guys. I want to say so much on this channel, but I kind of can't. I can't do it. Birds of a fucking feather. And there's way more to it. Do you think it's any mistake that so many children get trafficked throughout the United States? They traffic them from the group homes, they traffic them from the adoption agencies, they traffic them directly out of CPS. Hello. Gail says they didn't bother to hide their disbelief. Like most victims, Gail empathetically did not want to tell anyone about her molestation and only did it out of fear of pregnancy. Oh, my God. Our other sister kept silent until she was sure she couldn't be hurt by retaliation. Isn't that sick? But never forgot. Read Gail's story if you haven't already and see it resembles any other case of false memories you've ever heard of. They always use that. I wonder if they use that in the Masterson case. I did not know it'd be this long. My own experience with memories of trauma is similar. Oh, there's a pattern here, you guys. So she gets out of that whole situation with her father, who was a pedo, and then her mom marries another guy who tries the same stuff. I told you some women sell their girls. I'm just starting to wonder if that was what was going on. My own experience with memories of trauma is similar. My stepfather, John Bosma, I wonder what happened to him. I bet nothing happened. It's just so disgusting. Tried to molest me when I was 10 years, and I remember clearly his entire attempt to molest me, and always have. So 10, how big would you be when you're 10 years old? Depending on the child. 70 pounds? Ugh. Where we were, parked on the edge of the Grand Canyon, so he took her to an isolated place. What the inside of the car looked like, yep, when you're traumatized, a lot of times you do remember very well. Our nasty old blue Volvo, what my sister was doing outside, using the dirty public park bathroom, and some of the exact phrases we said. John, my heart is beating like a rabbit's. Val, I've always thought of you as a father. trying to flatter, distract, and make him feel guilty, successfully. Ugh. After I talked him out of it and into driving all night to get home without stopping at a hotel, I felt only great relief and never even thought about telling Carolyn because she had never protected me against John before. Maybe she didn't know about John. There's so many of these. Guys, we got to keep our eyes out. Got something for him. I laughed and said scornfully, "No, he didn't. He only tried." The memory was there and ready instantaneously because it had actually happened. Closing. Ironically, one of the most accurate descriptions of Keith Henson's behavior, that was her father, over the past few decades comes from the Scientologists in their summary of Keith Henson reproduced in a Usenet posting, and then they give the idea. I'm not going to say the whole thing. Leaving aside the obvious Scientology propaganda, their description of Keith Henson's motivations and actions is painfully accurate. Well, they got his ruin. They got plenty of that stuff going on in Scientology. This quote is particularly insightful. According to Henson's neighbors who lived in Tucson near Henson, he and his then wife were into drugs, you see, and were neglectful of their children. Henson has always been more interested in seeing his name in print, that's a narcissist, than he is in trying to do something constructive and worthwhile in his life. You know, except R-ing little girls, like his own daughters. Scumbag. Keith can claim absolutely no credit for any of the achievements of his daughters. The most he can claim is that he harms some of us less than others. Everything we accomplish or achieve is in spite of him. Finally, a notification for the benefit of Keith Henson and his supporters. From now on, I will make every effort I can to make the truth about Keith Henson known. In particularly, if I see Keith Henson in public, I will make sure everyone around us knows that he is a child molester and that I have the evidence to show it. If you don't want this to happen in your bailiwick, tell Keith that he isn't welcome. Valerie Henson, San Francisco, December 2007. val.henson@gmail.com. So that's it, you guys. Depressing, but I'm glad she got her story out. Another pedo. You know, propped up, police didn't give an F, didn't care, discouraged her from telling her story. So I will leave a link in the description box, like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.